Hello and welcome to the Alberta Freemason podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brother Tobias Terrill. With us, as always, is our producer, Brother Preston Meyer. We also have Brother John Hayes, and then we have some special guests for today's special podcast. So we have three brethren joining us specifically to talk about the Weekend Without Titles 3.0 event, which is occurring on March 21st to the 23rd of 2025. We have Brother Chris Uchman, past Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Alberta, 2022 and 2023. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
We have Brother Brad Billings of Grapevine Lodge number 288, Grand Lodge of Texas, past Grand Master of 2022 and currently the Grand Secretary. Hello, Brad.
How's it going?
Thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be
finally,
here.
we have Brother Oscar Alleyne, past Master of Wappingers, Lodge number 671 under the Grand Lodge of the Grand State of New York. Chris, if you want to lead us off by maybe talking a little bit about the Weekend Without Titles.
The Weekend Without Titles was an initiative that happened during my year as Grand Master. And there's a void after COVID of any fraternal event happening within our grand jurisdiction. And it was, in my mind, very important that we, as a fraternity, do fraternal things. And that's where the idea came up for this weekend. And it's a weekend, as we say, it's of extreme fellowship and excellent education. And so the concept is we have, it's focused primarily on the fellowship between the brethren. So it's only Masons that are there. We don't have our spouses or partners come with us. We get together for the weekend. We've been very lucky to have some amazing speakers come. This is our third year now, and each year we just keep growing and making it better and better. We've got a fantastic committee that works on it, and we've been lucky enough to have some great guest speakers come too. And this year, I think we've really lucked out with the two guys that are coming up to spend the weekend with us in Red Deer, even though it's going to be a little cold.
It'll be freezing. I'm from Texas. I don't do cold. Y'all may do cold. I don't. So
Yeah.
Let's maybe start with Oscar and maybe tell us how you ended up meeting Chris and how you ended up getting into this role.
So I get around a little bit, if I can say that. So there was a spring workshop that I was invited to several years back, and I gave a couple of presentations there, and that's where we met. And then just happened to run into each other almost in every other Masonic venue since. And of course, when he moved on to become Grand Master and was even much more on the travel circuit, ran into him several times on end, and to that extent, and we really developed a good bond of relationship as I have with Brother John Hayes and several brothers from across the world. So that's where I would say our interactions and our paths crossed.
Fantastic. And Brad, how did you end up coming into this weekend?
that's a good question. I don't know exactly where we met. I think it was at the Conference of Grand Masters, but I don't remember what year it was.
No.
You're shaking your head. Where did we meet?
We met at the Shrine Imperial session.
That's right.
In Minneapolis when we
2022.
were both Grand Masters.
How did we not meet at the Conference of Grand Masters before that?
Well, because then we keep running into each other at the conference.
That's okay.
Since, yeah.
Yep. Okay. I don't know how we avoided each other before that, but we both served as Grand Master in 2022. A great year, I might add, for Grand Masters. If
Very good.
but I would agree. But we've met, we've overlapped several times. Most recently, he came to Dallas and was forced to go to a Dallas Stars game and a Cowboys game, and I got to chauffeur him around one evening. So just like Masonry makes the world a smaller place, we keep running into each other, even on my home turf here in Texas. So it's one of those things that we're very fortunate to have met and got to spend time together. And I look forward to freezing when I step off the plane in Red Deer.
Now, Brad, I know that you've provided us with your topic for the weekend, which is making Freemasonry more visible. Have you got any insights for those that are listeners that we have that maybe haven't yet committed to the weekend? Have you got any insights or anything that you want to suggest they hear to maybe entice them to want to attend?
Absolutely. I'm not the expert in any of this. So the audience will be expected to be interactive. I will be asking questions. I'll be pulling answers out from the crowd. But the idea is, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever you want to say, all the prominent men in the community were Masons. It didn't need to be visible. We didn't need to make it visible, right? It was there. And even going beyond that, in a time where there wasn't as much outside noise, right? The people that took care of the town were the role models of the day. They were the local celebrities, if you will, and all those guys were Freemasons. During that time, we didn't have to put ourselves out there. We didn't have to advertise. That is completely flipped. We're on the opposite end of that nowadays, right? There's all this outside noise. It's harder and harder to be seen in your community. So we're going to explore a lot of different things. I'm going to touch on a lot of different aspects, but one of the key things that we're going to look at is how do we make Masonry visible today? And it's something that I think is beneficial to every Freemason, whether you apply it at your lodge level, district level, whether you apply it at the Grand Lodge level. It's something that everybody should be able to take something home from, and myself included. I hope we all kind of learn together throughout the process.
I have this conversation quite often with those folks out that are non-Masons in the public, and we often hear that term secret society, and I say, well, if we were truly a secret society, will we put a logo on our building?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty obvious mistake on our part if we want to stay secretive.
That's true, but I will add that I think we do a pretty good job of remaining secret, just by, if you're not putting yourself out there in today's society, you're getting left behind. And the thing that it always stirs back to, people want to bring up, membership this, membership that. And I've always had the opinion that it's not that good men know about our fraternity and choose not to join. It does happen on occasion. And of course, we've all met those guys and we know that they have their reasons, whatever they may be. But I think by large and in part, the biggest issue that we face is people just don't know we exist. They think we're some club that was around back in the day, a historical type organization that doesn't have any standing, when in fact we're very alive and probably as vibrant or more vibrant than we've been in the past. We have more missions, more things you can do in Freemasonry, more opportunities to travel and to be a part of something outside of just the local lodge. That's where it starts. But there's this whole world that's out there that people don't even know the local lodge exists, much less this whole umbrella that is Freemasonry. So how do we expose people to that? Because I believe if people see that and they're exposed to it and they see us having a good time, very important, they see us having a good time, they will want to join. And so how do we do that in a way that is not marketing and promoting ourselves, but how do we do it in the right ways? So those are some of the things that we're going to explore, and other topics along the same lines if we have time.
I joined Freemasonry, and I often heard that phrase, "To be one, ask one." And as many on this group here have heard me say before, if you don't know who to ask, it's pretty hard to ask.
Right.
So you've got to be out there, and you've got to be visible as a Freemason for people to know who it is.
If ever there were a slogan that was just rode until it was completely, I mean, that dead horse has been beat to death on several occasions. But I agree, to be one, ask one. It was great and it worked for a very, very long time. Now we don't know who to ask. So we've got to kind of figure out how do we get to the first part of that equation? And how do we maybe make it a little bit more enticing, a little more modern? We're not changing the traditions, we're not changing the work and all that stuff, but how do we package it in a way that is more consumable for today's prospect member? That's really what we're going to deal with. And like I said, other things that I don't want to give away until we get there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you listen to some of our previous episodes, we've talked about all sorts of different things from making the lodges a bit more inviting to attend. Not just have it down to the meat and potatoes of the meeting. People don't attend for that. Getting feedback from your membership, things like that. Letting your brethren or the potential brother get to meet your brethren within your lodge before they join, so that there's a comfortability that goes with that. So John, have you got anything to add to?
If I could just add one last aspect to that, we're going to look at real life examples. So things that were put in place that did work, right? And not that what works in Texas is going to work in Alberta. I'm not trying to say that, but hopefully we're looking at real life, real world examples, not philosophy or ideas of what we think might work. These are things that have worked in other jurisdictions and may just work in your jurisdiction as well. And again, a lot of times it's, hey, that will work. We need to modify or tweak this portion to better fit where we are in the craft. But we're going to be looking at real world stuff, and I'm going to break it down in some examples. So just wanted to toss that out there, as it's not just philosophy, it's actual put into production. So,
and hopefully the conversation on that weekend will also allow you to bring things back to Texas and Oscar back to New York, because that's the whole point of these type of events, is where we get to share what we do with each other.
if we don't all learn something at the conference, then we did something wrong. I agree with that.
John?
Yeah, thanks. Brad's actually speaking my language completely here. It's refreshing to hear people reach many of the same conclusions from a lot of the same data, but individually it kind of reaffirms the conclusions that we've come to too. And in my Masonic orbit, which Brad doesn't really, I don't think we have a big Venn diagram overlap at this point, but I think one of the key points that for me would be, and maybe Brad can comment on this, is that as we go forward, one of the things we can't do is keep trying to do the same thing again and again and again. And that comes back to Brad's point about this not being a philosophical exercise. If we go to somebody and say, what should we do to improve the lodge? And they come up with an idea, and the idea is, well, we should go with one-day classes because people don't have time, just as an example. And there's a lot of data to indicate that although that's not a detriment to the craft, it's no benefit either. It has absolutely no benefit going forward 5 or 10 years as to whether someone stays on, becomes a good or better member, gets involved. It is an absolute non-starter in terms of value add. And there are some who say it's a value detriment, and there's data to say that it's not that either. So one of the things we need to do going forward is, and I love the idea of coming up with things that have worked and then tweaking them, rather than returning to the same tired old things that really haven't worked since 1960, when the numerical decline of the craft started. But I also do believe that, and I said this actually a couple of weeks ago in a meeting, I think we may, if we look back on the 2020s from 2080 or something, we may look back and go, man, that was a golden age of masonry.
You asked specific for my comments, and I'm right there with you on most of this, because I sit at a very unique position, not as a past grad master, but at the age that I'm at. I'm 41 years old, and the youngest guys that can join in Texas are 18. I think our average guy that's joining is around my age, kind of low 40s, but our average age of Mason is 65. So I'm at this nice spot where I can kind of see where the young guys are coming from. I can kind of see where the old timers are coming from, and I see where the guys who are joining our fraternity right now, why they're joining and what they see in it. And I'll say that taking something, tweaking it makes absolute sense. But you touched on something that I'm very passionate about, and that is kind of going to the one-day class, and I feel like that is a Band-Aid that might have worked for the previous generations. But the new guys that are joining now, the 40 years and under, they want what we consider kind of our grandfather's Freemasonry. They want to learn it the old school way. They want to go back to the traditional. So it was funny because you made a comment about, 1960, something that didn't work in 1960. Actually, that might be the time to bring that back, right? It's been 60 years since that's been out there. Hey, maybe that's so old that we need to try that idea again. But certainly stuff that hasn't worked in the last 5 or 10 years, quit beating that like the dead horse, and let's look at things that actually have worked, and or bring stuff back from way back in the day. And we see stuff like that with the resurgence of the popularity of the chamber reflection and other things like that. Not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's one example of when you see people seeing something that has been from the past and wanting to, in a way, bring it back because it's such an old tradition that it's cool again, right? So just a couple of thoughts based off your comments.
Yeah, the old adage of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, certainly resonates with a lot. But then we also have, just because it isn't broken doesn't mean it can't run better.
And I'll add on to that too. It's one of my favorite sayings because I say the generations, the past two generations that have led Freemasonry, they kind of they held on to this thing, right? We had the huge inflow of people, and then we had a decline, and we're still in the decline. But they are holding this thing together with duct tape and baling wire, as we would say in Texas, like just the bare minimum, just get by. But now the new guys that are joining, they're like, no, how do we fix it permanently? How do we level the foundation so now we can build upon it? That's more of the new style that we're looking at. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about as well when we look at making masonry more visible as we move forward. So
Fantastic. Now I want to move on to Oscar. What is your topic?
Freemasonry social contract.
Freemasonry social contract. So maybe give us a little bit of a snippet of that, and so again, same scenario, so that you can entice some of our maybe brothers that are on the fence to look at attending.
Sure. So, as Brad says, one of the things I do with my talks, no matter what the topic is, there's always going to be a sharp left turn or maybe a short right turn. So you're never going to get the full just until you experience it. But nonetheless, the premise is basically built upon when we think about Freemasonry and Freemasonry's role in contemporary society, both from a historical perspective, both from an ancient perspective, as well as more contemporary modern perspective, there's this element around what is our social contract? What is it that we say? And how do we embody those particular tenets? And in this discussion, I plan on using an interesting example from the 1800s, which could have happened today, but it really illustrates the decisions that were made, and as well as the lessons learned around cultivating our place in society and standing up for justice, standing up for equality, and standing up for what's right by virtue of being Freemasons and the value that puts in place, and the outcomes of it, specifically by certain decisions that were made, and even some elements to the story that I think will be kind of interesting.
Okay. Well, yeah, it kind of lines with what Brad has talked about. This contract of, when you're a Freemason, you live by certain tenets, and with those tenets, you go out and you're public, and you interact with people, and you treat everybody with respect and dignity, and that's some of that that Masonic contract, if I'm
Yes,
not mistaken.
certainly. The elements, of course, as you get to experience and see the presentation, a lot more details will be filled in, but it really tries to underscore that point, and re-emphasize once again, as was mentioned this weekend without titles, the whole premise of bringing brothers together to both reconnect, readjust, build their resiliency, all of the above. I think that it provides kind of a inspirational, feel good, but also contemplative story from the lens of when all else fails, what are you going to do? What is expected of you as a Freemason to continue with the status quo, or to stand up and uphold that which is a fundamental goal within the organization as it emphasizes.
Yeah, well, speaking in Masonic terms, of course, if we're not working on a rough ashlar and progressing each and every day, if we're not changing or adjusting, then we become stagnant and we become outpaced with the world around us, with our brethren around us, and so forth, right?
I have to say that I was excited about the weekend before this, but listening to you guys again, I'm just reassured that having the choice of having you two come up is a wise one. And it's going to be enlightening for not only the brethren of Alberta, and we've got people coming from Saskatchewan, from Ontario, from Washington State. So it's more than just Alberta, but I think it'll be enlightening for you two as well. I hope to see vibrant masonry that's happening in Alberta. We've got a real, I believe there's been a paradigm shift in masonry within our jurisdiction over the last 6 or 7 years, and it was a conscious shift. Like, it was, we can't continue doing what we were doing because it's not working. And I remember, this is a little, I'll never forget the day I became Grand Master, and we had a pub night instead of a barbecue to celebrate uh, um, it happening. And it was the first in-person communication that we had since COVID, was the when I became Grand Master. And I remember walking out of the pub and just saying to everybody, welcome to the new Grand Lodge of Alberta. And since then, we continue to have energy and growth. And the point of weekends like this is, if we can't have fun together, why are we doing this? And sometimes we get too stiff and we get too caught up in the minutia of things that everybody thinks we should be doing, and we forget that when we boil it all down, we're a fraternity. And what's that? It's a group of friends that want to do something together. And that's what I think we need to remember when it comes to that renewal or the improving masonry, is always remember that it boils down to, it's a group of friends that want to be together, and always go with that lens.
I agree. I think I'm always excited to hang out with my northern North American brothers, because oftentimes, everything gets a little skewed to the southern of the North American brothers. But it's really, from all the experience I've had on whether the western or the eastern side, it's really been really special, and the brothers who come together and their outlook on Freemasonry and their experience. I always look forward to it.
I want to say real quick, the last couple of years I've seen, I didn't necessarily hear about it before. Our Grand Lodge falls kind of mid to late January, but I would see all the pictures of this weekend after, and man, I had complete FOMO. I was so upset that I, hadn't gotten to go to this event. So when I was invited, I'm stoked. I'm so excited to be able to come up and see you guys.
Being on the Weekend Without Titles committee, I can tell you that we've got a lot of fun things planned. We've got a panel discussion, which of course Brad and Oscar, you two will be participating with. That will also include Brother Pat Davis, who's the current Grand Master for Grand Lodge of Saskatchewan. We've got a Scotch potential tasting thing going on one night. The second night, Chris, I believe we've got some fun and entertainment with a revision of Cornhole, which I'm sure some of you know what that is, but ours is going to be called Chuck Hole. And the reason for that is because of our incoming, so our Deputy Grand Master is Chuck Rose. And so we've changed the name of the game to Chuck Hole. And but we've got a lot of things fun planned for the weekend. It's just going to be outstanding. You kicked it off by saying that this is a weekend of extreme fellowship, and that it is. We've got hospitality suites lined up. We've got lots of fun and games. The food that we've selected is just going to be fantastic. And then, aside from you two as keynote speakers, we have, what do we have? 15 more
15.
15 more speakers on all kinds of different topics. So for the brethren that are listening, you can reach out or have a look at www.WWTGLA.ca, and you can have a look at that. There you can see the schedule of events. You can see the registration. You can see all of the details are there. So have a look at that and make sure that you get registered. March 2nd is the cutoff. Brethren have till then to register.
We'll
go
also
ahead,
be
Preston.
recording a live episode of this very podcast.
Yeah, one of the sessions is us as your podcasters, and we're gonna do a little bit of a session.
Or what is the one thing you think the brothers would find to be most impactful?
I love the idea of expanding the Masonic world of our brethren. And not everyone gets the opportunity or is blessed as we are to be able to travel the way we do Masonically. So by bringing in individuals from outside of our jurisdiction who have both shared and different experiences, we can the hope is that we can expand their Masonic world without them having to leave the jurisdiction. And that's one of the reasons why I love the idea of bringing in guys each year to just expand upon what Masonry is, because it becomes very local if we don't do that.
Thank you.
I love that. And I'll tell you, I know so many guys, because I travel around, that only experience Masonry within the four walls of their lodge, and they are missing not Masonry, because I absolutely think that's the foundation. You get a great idea of what Masonry is within the lodge, but you're missing probably the greatest side piece of Masonry, which is getting to travel, getting to meet other brethren. And I don't know what y'all mean by extreme fellowship, but I look forward to that, because regardless of where you are, and I just got back from Oscar and I were both at Masonic Week in DC, and it's the brotherhood is growing, and it's growing not just in a way that is, you've got these few interested guys. No, it's several interested guys who travel around, who meet one another, and who are constantly doing different things in Freemasonry. So to expand this beyond just the four walls of your lodge, if you're out there listening and you're kind of on the fence, like, I don't know what this thing is, just show up, come to it one time. And if it doesn't, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I think the majority of people that have been to a conference like this, that have been to something where they've traveled outside of their comfort zone, it always pays dividends. And so I hope to see many of you there, and hopefully some of you that are on the fence will pull the trigger and show up to what's going to be the largest WWT3 of all time.
This is a weekend without titles. This is a weekend where we focus on the fundamental aspect of what we all came to this organization for: brotherhood. That's exciting to me. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to see, how you all have to showcase and what little we can do to add to that, that flavor of that menu. But it's really something. And if no one else comes, just know I'll be the happiest person just to be around any brother who shows up from that region, because it's one of those opportunities you don't get too often.
I am very much looking forward to what the title of the weekend is. Weekend without titles. My favorite times in Masonry have always been after the event, after the lecture or whatever meeting that we've all come together for, and sitting around and having a coffee or a bourbon or smoking a cigar, whatever the case may be, campfire, probably where y'all are at, 'cause it's freaking cold, and just having that. We don't have any pretensions. We don't have any protocol that we have to go through. Just having an honest conversation, and whether that's a guided conversation, somebody has something burning or something going on at their lodge or their jurisdiction that they really want to get some advice on, or whether it's just kind of going around and around until we find a topic that we stick on. I think that there is as much Masonry learned when you get a group of guys together. There's as much Masonry learned after the event and in the social aspect as there could ever be at the event. So, when y'all say extreme fellowship, I'm looking forward to that. And, I like to put that to the test. I hope to wake up early and go to bed late and leave exhausted, but in the same sense, leave recharged with my Masonic battery. So I'm going to bring it. and I hope all you guys do too. And I look forward to seeing y'all next month.
I look forward definitely to this opportunity to have that fellowship, that bonding, and learning from those brothers who will be in attendance, participating in something that I think is definitely exquisite and is a jewel for your jurisdiction and region, and also ultimately to truly share in that common understanding, a common thread, as we talk about not only for my talk on the Freemasonry social contract, but also in just what are those issues that are of paramount importance for us to succeed in this craft that we are seeking so hard to improve, not only for ourselves, but for the next generation that is to follow. So I'm very, very excited all that. And I would say if you hear nothing else, make sure you attend this weekend without titles, because it is going to be fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of the Alberta Freemason podcast, with voices across the continent, not just the province. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.